Welcome to another weekly featured business brought to you by Visibility Impact and your host, James Moffat, where he will gracefully take our featured guest on a personal and business journey and stories that will inspire, educate, and engage you.
Hello, and welcome to another Friday Featured Business brought to you by Visibility Impact and your host, myself, James Moffat. Today, we have our 112th guest, all the way from the UK, Shahana Knight, which I hope I've got right. So, Shahana, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much. It's lovely to be here.
Right, so Shahana, we're going to take you on a journey from your childhood to where you are now and any memorable experiences that you want to share on that way. But before we get going, we kick the show off with our singer, our local singer, Emily. So Emily, if you could just introduce yourself, just say a few words, the song that you're going to sing, and then over to you.
Okay, hi, I'm Emily, from London, but living in Switzerland, and I'm here with Nicola, who plays the piano with me. And we have a duo called Emily and Nicola. And we're actually rehearsing for our next concert, which will be March the 24th in Lausanne.
2 days after my birthday, so maybe I come over.
Nice. Well, I'm actually celebrating my birthday on the same day. So come and we have a joint party. That would be amazing. So we're going to do a song that we're actually in the middle of rehearsing, but I'm going to be honest, we haven't done it all the way through yet. So please bear with us. It's like a little rehearsal, which we'll show you guys for your feedback. All right, it's Saving All My Love for You by Whitney Houston. Yeah. I feel
Bravo.
Thank you.
Bravo. The cat shot out the door. Yeah, lucky I wasn't drinking wine. No, it was beautiful.
Thank you.
So gorgeous.
So anyway, Emily, just before you disappear, because I know you can't hang around, and welcome, Galia, that you're into, I mean, you do your own activities and things for kids at school. So I just want you to share just a little bit, because I want you to catch up later, and probably the recording you'll catch up on, and you want to know more about Shahana.
Mm-hmm.
So you just want to say a few words about what you do?
Yeah, so I have a company in Switzerland called Be Creative. And so I do holiday camps for kids and birthday parties and after school clubs. But I'd really like to talk to you another time, Shahana. I'm so sorry I can't stay, because I'd be really interested to know a little bit more about what you're doing with kids, because I'm just about to start doing some training to, I don't know what to call it, coaching maybe, like groups of children more than one-to-one on stuff like, trauma and abuse, sexual harassment, stuff like this. So I'd really, really like to connect with you if that's possible.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. It sounds like you're doing some really great work.
And she also does like Harry Potter camp type things as well.
Well, we all love a bit of Harry Potter, so that sounds really good. What age do you work with, Emily?
From 4 until, well, it depends, but usually until about 12. Usually primary kids, but there are some activities that will go higher. With the new stuff I want to do, it's more like young women. I mean, young girls, I mean, sort of, basically, so.
Amazing. Well, yeah, let's definitely catch up after this. That sounds so interesting. I'd love to have a chat.
All right, super. Thank you.
Then you'll have to come over to Switzerland.
Yeah,
come
hey,
to
me or Emily.
I live here, so you.
I actually really love that. I've been once before, and it was amazing. I went with camp when I was really, really young. And it was the most beautiful place. So yeah, I'll come. Just don't be late. If I come, you need to be on time.
Of course.
Okay, maybe Emily, you can share your link in the chat, and then Shahana's got it.
Yeah, brilliant. And I'll connect with you on LinkedIn.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Okay, so thank you, Emily. Welcome, Galia. Galia, maybe you just want to just introduce yourself quickly, just so we know who you are.
Hi, everyone.
I know who
Hi,
you are.
Shahana. We are new to each other. Hi. So I'm Galia Akimova, Bulgarian born, lived in UK for 20 years. I'm back to Bulgaria for the last 3 years and operating from here, being in well-being field as a spa holistic business for 15 years. I transit into the life coaching, and that's what I'm doing now, life coaching and nutrition.
Oh, amazing. That sounds amazing.
Thank you.
And Galia's going to be in the book as well.
Oh, I'm going to have to read this book.
Is Shahana in the book as well?
No, too late for the first one.
Yeah, she's in the new one. Second.
No, but Shahana, you expressed an interest to be in the second book.
I did actually, yeah. I would be interested to be in the second book, but that doesn't mean that you have to put me in it just because we're on this.
Yeah. I mean, we haven't finished the first book yet, so we've got no timelines for the second book yet. But when you read the first book, you'll be amazed. You want to be in every book that we do.
Oh, I can't wait. Listening to some of the guests you've had on, I can't wait. I really want to hear more about all of the people you described to me before. I'm going to go and look up after we've had our conversation.
Yeah, I'll share the links in the chat so you can see, but they'll be in the chat notes and everything afterwards anyway, all the links for the viewers that are watching, then they can catch up as well. So, but I did read in the notes that, Shahana, that you're going to write your own book.
I am. So I've not told anybody yet, but I've been asked to write my first ever book. So I'm very excited about it. And basically it will be like what I consider to be my life's work in book form. And it's something I've wanted to do for years and years and years. I've spoken to lots of different people, but it never felt like the right time. And then a book publisher contacted me and said, would you be interested in writing a book? And it just felt right. So I actually need to sit down and write the book now.
Right. Just out of curiosity, is the book publisher in London?
Oh God, you're testing me now. I don't know. I've not looked up their address, but
All right,
possibly.
no worries. Just curious to see if it was the same publisher as ours. But anyway, we can share that later. So let's start. Actually, we're going to take you down memory lane. So we've kind of jumped it a bit because we're talking about what you're doing, and I did that because of Emily, and I wanted her to actually speak to you before she dropped off. So Shahana, first of all, tell us, where are you living now and where were you born?
So I was born in Stockport, as they say, Stockport, and I'm not too far from there now. So I moved like 20 minutes away with a family, and that's where we've been. But I do have plans to go rural. So at some point I won't be here. I'll be in the countryside.
Okay. And for those that don't know where Stockport is, if you could just tell us where the next kind of big city is so people can picture where it could be.
So like Manchester, England.
Right. Okay. So you're a Stockport County football supporter?
No, I'm not into football, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I checked out. There's a women's league as well. So I don't know if the women are doing better than the men.
Maybe.
But anyway, I just say that because I lived in Newcastle, and yeah, I've supported them ever since. And now they've actually got some investment.
Can you get this accent?
Well, I could put on the Geordie accent, but
go on.
You wouldn't know what I'm on about. Right. Anyway, so Shahana, let's take you down memory lane. So, as a child growing up, have you got any siblings?
Yes, I've got a brother.
Right, younger, older?
Yeah, so he is a year younger than I am. And then I was born. So I was born in the Feb, and then he was born the following March. So we're really, really close in age and close in general.
All right. So like twins, kind of.
Yeah. They dressed us the same as well. So, we did look like twins a lot.
Yeah. All right. He's got long hair like you.
No, but he did have longer hair as a little boy. They never cut it dead short. It was always a bit of a bob. So we did look very twin-like. He was cute, though.
You have to share some pictures.
I don't think he'd thank me.
All right. So, yeah, growing up and as a kid, can you just give us an impression of kind of the hobbies, the activities, the interests you had, and what did you aspire to be when you grew up?
Yeah, so when I was younger, my mum and dad were very creative. So my dad was into playing the guitar. He loved the Beatles. My second cousin is actually Mick Hucknall from Simply Red. So dad was really into like anything musical, and he would often be playing his guitar or his drums, and music was always playing in the house. So we grew up with the greats around us, constantly listening to some amazing artists that I don't feel have ever kind of been matched on par since, to be honest. So music's a big thing for me. So I've always loved music. I also constantly have music on. And then my mum was really creative. So she loved anything arty. She would always have children around, creating bird feeders for the garden or doing painting or whatever it might be. So I was really into art. I was really into creativity, loved my music. And also both my parents worked with children. So my dad was a head teacher of our local primary school, which meant that while I was there, he was there. And then my mum at the time was a childminder. so she could look after us at home, and then later became a lecturer and went and managed nurseries. So children were always around us, and I always knew that I wanted to have children and also work with children. I just loved everything and anything to do with kids. I think they're magical. I still do think they're magical. So from about 8 years old, I was dead on the fact that I was going to have children young, and I was going to work with children like my mum, and that was going to be my career.
Excellent. So when you said you're going to have children young, you meant your own children?
Listen, I wanted kids at 12. If I could have had children really young, I would have. I had to wait for my husband to catch up and want children too. But I still did have them quite young. I was in my early 20s when I had my first daughter. So, it wasn't really young, but it was still pretty young. And I waited. That was me waiting for children.
But you got married young.
Yeah, we did. We got married really young. And it's funny because I wanted children so much, but my husband wanted to be married first. So I said, okay, well, let's hurry up and get married then so we can have our first baby. Because in my mind, being around children is where I'm happiest and always have been. So for me, that was what I felt would complete me as a person and also as part of our family. So yeah, we did get married early and we did have children youngish.
So you could technically be a young grandma later.
Maybe. I'm not sure how young it would make me though. But yeah, I like the idea of that, being able to have the energy to get involved with the kids and help out and stuff like that. I'd really like to be that version of a grandparent.
I don't know if I should share this, but my younger sister, she had her first son when she was 17.
Wow.
Right. And then he inadvertently in a party got his girlfriend pregnant, right, when he was 15. Right. So she became a grandma in her early 30s.
Wow.
Can you believe that?
That's quite magical, though, to be able to be part of your grandchildren's lives when you're still really young.
Well, it is quite ironic because the grandchildren are the same age as my children. So it's kind of skipped a generation.
Yeah.
Right. But anyway, whatever these days, because when I grew up, it was, my parents, in those days, your parents typically had a lot of kids in a younger age. And then it kind of went through generation gaps where it was then people having kids a lot later, kind of on the boundary of like in their 40s and that, and having kids.
Yeah.
And so when you hear people getting kids younger, it's kind of not so much the norm anymore.
No, it's not. A lot of people I know, they want to have their career sorted and then have children, and they did it the opposite way around to what we did.
Right. So your kids are what ages are they?
So 7 and 9, both of them. So I've got a boy and a girl. The youngest one is my little boy, he's 7, and my oldest is 9, she's a girl. So
are you their teacher?
No. I am in lots and lots of ways, but not their actual teacher at school, no. But I do teach them a lot, and a lot of things that I'm quite alternative in my thinking. So I teach them a lot of alternative thinking that other people wouldn't necessarily consider mainstream views.
So growing up then, like, was your father being the head of a school and stuff? Was your education kind of the standard education that you got at school, or was it something kind of outside of that as well?
No, it was actually. My dad only actually taught us for a short period of time because he got really unwell and really struggled. But up until that point, our education was a pretty standard education. My mum and dad valued education and learning, but they valued experiences and sort of the wider world more. So they kind of encouraged us to, go on to different countries and visit like different countries. We loved France. We were constantly in France. and to be around people and to help people and to, you know, create experiences for people. So we were constantly putting on events at the house for the children locally. We would always do bonfire parties, and that's really where the richness was in what they taught me, rather than academics. I mean, I couldn't spell at school at all, ever, and my dad would be really frustrated by the fact that I couldn't spell. And I do remember he homeschooled us for 1 week, and we all took time off school and he homeschooled us to try and bump us up a little bit. But we both did well at school, and we were both, you know, good learners. But we weren't by any means kind of super academics or anything like that. It was more about people and connection for us.
Excellent. I mean, there's a lot of people that aren't kind of academically minded, but they're great at other things. I always say that inside everybody, there's gifts. You just need to find out what your gifts are. And we're not all gifted in the same thing. So we're not all going to be the best mathematicians, right? Or the best spellers, or the best at something. I mean, you might be okay at it, but you could excel at something, but it's finding that something. And sometimes it's so deeply buried within yourself that you never find it.
Yeah.
And that's quite sad, because I felt that schools don't enhance that. I always look back at my school reports, and it was funny because I mentioned this in the book as well, that I always got the comments by the teachers that if James concentrated more, he could achieve better results. But in saying that, these were more the academical classes. But if I looked at the things that I liked, which were more the practical classes, then I excelled at those because I loved it. I loved the hands-on. I loved getting involved. I would attentively listen, and then I would do exactly what I was told, and I would achieve great results. Yeah. But when it came to things that I couldn't be bloody bothered with, right, then I did it to a stage that I would understand, but it was never going to be my thing. But it also depends on the teacher. You could have the worst subject, but an excellent teacher, then you'll start to learn something you didn't really fancy. And then the other way around, you could have the best subject and the most boring teacher.
That's so true.
So it's a challenge, but I mean, everybody mentions kind of the 3 A's, right? Learn your 3 A's, right? You know the 3 A's?
Oh, the 3 A's? I don't know the 3 A's.
Well, I mean, they say 3 A's. They say arithmetic,
right?
Reading and writing. I don't know why they call it 3 A's, because it's not actually A's, but it's called the 3 A's, right? Because I guess you say, but anyway, you need some foundation on things. I mean, you need to understand numbers, right? It doesn't mean you have to be a mathematician. You need to read and write, otherwise you can't communicate. But it doesn't mean that you have to be a professor in it.
Yeah.
But other things definitely need to be extracted. So then growing up as a kid, and definitely you mentioned about communication and networking. I think that is so undervalued when you're at school, because there's expressions that people say your net work is your net worth, as if it's all about your network. And the more connections, it doesn't mean that you have to have millions of connections, but it's about the worth of those. What's the value of the connections that you've got? And that they could be personal connections or business connections and so on. So then the communication bit, obviously you've done well. So before we get on to what you're doing, because I'm eager to learn about what you are doing. So growing up, was there any kind of turning points? Because you've mentioned in the questionnaire that I've sent out that you did some charity work. So could you just touch on that and tell us what it is that you actually did and why did you do it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a story, really. So it probably makes sense if I sort of started a little bit further on and then came up to that point. So like I say, my dad was the head teacher of our local primary school, and what I've described about our family has been really positive. But actually, when I got to about 8 or 9, I realised that our cereal box family, so our perfect 4x4 family with, we'd never struggled for money. We lived in a beautiful house. Like, we had all these people around us, and, life seemed really great. And when I got to about 8 or 9, I realised that actually it wasn't so great. My dad had to leave work. So I think when I was probably in year 5, he left work. And he really struggled with depression, so manic depression. So one day he'd be up, one day he'd be down. And also alcoholism, which had been a theme probably for a long, long, long time. But I only became aware of it when I got to about 8 or 9 years old. And these rose-coloured glasses kind of came off, and I realised that actually we weren't this amazing, happy family, and suddenly noticed that my needs weren't being met, and that emotionally my parents weren't able to provide what I needed as I came out of being little, where, you know, you're cute and lovable and you kind of just see your parents as these amazing things. And they probably managed a lot better when we were little. But as we got a bit older, those problems expanded and we became more aware of them. And so suddenly there was a lot of emotional abuse in our life. There was a lot of trauma in our life. You know, my dad was consumed with what was going on for him and his trauma and his past. And he couldn't leave that behind enough to connect with us properly as his children. But that would tear him up. So some days he would be really engaged with us. Some days he would be an amazing father, like take us out and we would be laughing and joking all day. And he would be so charismatic and probably, you know, if you compared him to the average father, he would excel on those days. But then other days he wouldn't get out of bed. He would be emotionally abusive. He would be scary in comparison. And you never know which one you were going to get from day to day. And that started to then impact our relationship with our parents and our ability to feel safe and secure. And we also never talked about what happened behind closed doors in our family. So everyone else thought that we were this amazing, wonderful family, and you didn't speak about it. So I would go to school and I would always present as the good girl. So I would do my work. I would, you know, be great with my friends. I would do everything I needed to do. But I was really struggling emotionally, like really being like torn up about things at home. And there was so many events that happened where, you know, it was emotional abuse, and we were so little. It was really difficult to understand, you know, how is this person so amazing one day and so scary the next day. And that consumed my mum, and she wasn't able to really take care of us and look at our emotional needs because she was so consumed with him and his needs. And that went on from being 8 to a very, very, very late age, actually, until I was in university. And it was constantly battles all the time. And that was a reoccurring theme in my life whilst Dad was here, that it was just constant trauma all the time. Before any big event, something would happen at home and I would be pulled into that. And it always felt like I had to take care and look after everybody else before myself. And that kind of all came to a head around the time that I was in university. So just before my university exams, my dad actually passed away. And it wasn't that he killed himself, he didn't, but he did stop eating and drinking and living because he just had given up. And so I knew it was coming and kind of foresaw that and was saying, you know, something really bad's going to happen, I can tell. And it did. But in the way that we were as I was as a young girl, I fought that fight for everybody else. So I helped arrange the funeral. I met all the guests. I helped them all look through photographs and help them talk through their experiences. And literally 2 days later, I was supposed to be taking my university exams, which I still did, and just managed all of these things. And that's kind of what I did the whole of my childhood. So even now, when I'm talking about my experiences, it's very rare that I actually think about I obviously think about how it's impacted me, but it's very rare that I look at like, what were my needs? Because I was always giving what everybody else needed to them. So when that happened and he passed away, I decided that it was time to go and do something different. And I'd had a trip booked, which is what you were talking about, with one of my best friends from university, to go and do some volunteering in Morocco with some children in orphanages. And it was one of the best experiences I could have had at that age, because it allowed me to mourn and to grieve and to have space and time for myself with people that were strangers but then quickly became friends, you know, groups of girls that had gone out volunteering. I was with my best friend and we created so many memories looking after children, which is what resonated with me and is what I loved, but also gave me that headspace and that time and that perspective that life hadn't given me up until that point. So that was probably quite a pivotal moment for me in my life, because it was the end of quite a lot of trauma and the beginning of me being able to start to heal. It was also the beginning of me finding myself and my journey and what I wanted to do. And at that point, I decided I wanted to work with children who were also struggling with trauma. Now, at the time, I didn't link the two together. I never thought for a second, well, I've had trauma in my life, so therefore I'm going to look after children with trauma, because I didn't acknowledge that I even had trauma at that point. That was just my reality. I didn't compare that with other people's, because we were still quite young. So, I mean, I know obviously early 20s, you're not that young, but you don't have all the life perspectives of being able to compare with other families at that point, really. So it's only really then that I started to kind of come into my own and be like, right, I'm going to do this with children. I want to work with traumatized children. I'm going to train as a play therapist. I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. And that was sort of the pivotal moment then to move into working with children who had been through their own traumas and using my life experiences to inform that, but without really knowing it.
Yeah, a beautiful story. So first of all, I'm sorry to hear about your father. So how old was he, by the way, just out of curiosity?
He was so young. So he was older than my mum always by about 10 years or something like that. Probably wrong there, but there was a big age gap. So I think he was in his 50s when he died. And mum was in her 40s, I think. So they were still a youngish, family. He wasn't old by any means.
So this was taking his own life, or just from alcohol abuse or something?
Think so. At that point, my mum had decided that she wanted to divorce my dad, but she'd obviously spent all of our childhood up until that point with him. So to get to that point was a really big thing for her. And I think knowing that was coming was the beginning of the end for him. I don't think he could foresee what his life would be without my mum and without the family he'd created. And he was one of the most loving, caring people as himself, without all the trauma that was attached to it. So the feeling of losing his family, which is all he ever wanted, was probably one of the hardest things he could conceive. And so he didn't physically go, I'm going to kill myself. But what he did do was just give up. So I think I remember weeks before, he would just be sat with a stale packet of crackers and alcohol and would just be staring into space, which he often did anyway. He would sit and drink all day. But he wouldn't eat, he wouldn't get up, he wouldn't wash, he wouldn't shower. And you could just see that he was his body just was giving up. In the end, they said it was a heart attack in bed, but actually I know he opted out because he couldn't see his life past that point. So to me, he decided that was the end for him, I think.
Yeah, terrible. Yeah.
And
the thing is,
so sorry to hear this. That's very actually touching story. And I would like to get in touch with you later on. Yeah, thank you, James. I don't know why I don't see myself on the screen.
I can see you.
Can you see me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's very sad, because I think that there's more emphasis, although still seriously lacking, about mental health problems in general. And even if you look at, I mean, we're just digressing a little bit, even if you look at LinkedIn, which I use regularly, over the last 2 or 3 years, I mean, nearly every other post, at least every day, you see a post about mental health, about suicides, about best friends, about a relative, a family member, something about people taking their own life, which is shockingly terrible. I mean, and the thing is that you don't see anybody offering assistance. You don't see the big tech giants that offer these social media platforms like addressing it. It's just kind of a free for all. Like we kind of show our sympathy and support, but besides that, there seems to be not a lot going on. But anyway, I say that because my guest next week, it was very much about a post about his best friend committing suicide in Australia. And like, he's going to be a guest next week. But I mean, I don't want to focus on that, but I just wanted to highlight mental health is a serious, serious problem. But if it's not captured, I mean, it's all ages. But if you look at children, which we're going to come on to shortly, they have traumas as well. And if you look at, I mean, you would have grown up with a trauma and not really allowed yourself to be that child because you were taking on another role that wasn't really the role a child. I'm not saying children shouldn't help out and stuff, but a child should still be allowed to be a child.
Yeah.
And in the absence of parents that are enabling that, then you're trying to fill a gap that isn't the gap for you to fill.
Yeah.
That was not your role.
No,
And
but you know, sorry,
Yeah,
James,
go
go
on.
on.
no, go on.
I was going to say that's so true. But I think what you were saying about mental health and kind of how it is talked about, but there's not really much help for it. When I was growing up, no one would even acknowledge mental health. People in my class with me when I was younger, they would be considered naughty, the boys that had severe childhood trauma at home. You know, they would be getting hit, they'd be getting abused. And yet when they came into school, they were punished for struggling with their emotions and struggling with their feelings. And I learned very quickly, well, to show outwardly that I'm struggling is not going to be accepted either. And so I learned to basically manage my own emotions and look after myself without burdening other people, because that wouldn't be received as me needing help. It would be received as me being naughty or being bad and not fitting into this, you know, child box that did what everyone told that child to do. And so very quickly I learned, well, the best thing to do is to just be quiet and get on with it and, you know, not talk about it. And so I didn't, but not once did a teacher come over and say, are you okay? Your dad's off from school. We know that there's something going on. No one checked in with me about my well-being. I never went to a session to talk to someone, nothing, never, ever, not even once. And I think, although I look back and I'm so thankful for that, because it's made me the person I am and it's made me, you know, start the career that I have and everything, all of those things, that hasn't changed. I'm, you know, nearly 35. I was 8 then. There are still children who are going to school and having these exact same experiences that are still struggling with their, you know, labeling of being naughty or of being bad because they're struggling with their behavior, but that's the way of showing that they're struggling in general. And I think that's one of the big things that I think was missed when I was growing up and can still easily be missed now, that we really need to start looking into, because, you know, like you say, no children should have to take on those responsibilities and those roles, and yet they do every day in really large numbers.
No, it's terrible, and thanks for sharing that. I mean, I grew up as well, probably some generations earlier, but it was exactly the same. And I mean, what happened? There's an expression: what happens at home stays at home.
Yeah,
and you don't talk about it outside of school. So no matter what happens to you, you'd make excuses as well. I mean, I'd go to school with a black eye or something, and then you'd make up oh yeah, I fell over, or I got in a fight with a kid in the street, and yeah, it was nothing of that. It was abuse at home.
yeah.
And you put on a happy face and be you kind of a Jekyll and Hyde character.
Yeah.
You were that happy-go-lucky kid at school. I mean, for some, that was the way I hid it.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
then behind closed doors, you become very depressed, and you're wishing kind of for something that was not happening. But anyway, so that yeah, go on, Brian.
I can. Some 10 years ago, we worked with a couple of NGOs that we had a project called Child Safety Map. So we had 2 roles. One is to point to the dangerous areas and things, so to make awareness of mostly parents that there could be certain risk. But the other part was even better, because it was having a lot of articles about all that you speak about: safety, drugs, suicides, sexual harassment. And it was making a spread because it's also, people should talk about this and to educate. This is something that they found. Unfortunately, we made for them the website to interact with the network, and they didn't have enough funds, so they had to shut it down.
Oh,
Fortunately, this, but it's a huge need for the society. So education of parents on transparency and giving a caring hand in the right moment, because if you miss the moment, it might be too late to.
yeah.
And this is it's tremendous. What nightmares, what is happening in the society. So it's, I think, neglected somehow.
Yeah. It's definitely brushed under the carpet a lot, isn't it?
Definitely. I think today people try to be more open, but it's not addressed. And I think everything goes back to the beginning. It goes back to your childhood and addressing problems then. And is there a common denominator that's causing this? And I found that in life that a lot of the time people go through life disillusioned, confused, lost, feeling a sense of no hope. And therefore there's no direction and there's no focus. And in the absence of that, then they're just meandering through life as a barely an existence. And there's a huge difference between existing and living. When you live something that's meaningful and purpose driven, something that you have a passion for getting out of bed every day to do. And once you find that, which is not easy to find, then there's a reason for being. And once you found your reason for being, then nobody's going to stop you, right? And you're adamant in your beliefs that this is what you're going to do, and you're going to not stop at anything to achieve that. But finding that is the hard bit. And in actually knowing that you're worthy and you're valued and you have gifts. Everybody has gifts, regardless, right? And the biggest challenge is finding them. So this is something that, I mean, I ensure with my kids. I mean, when one of the kids says that they're excellent, my eldest son, excellent at maths, he's a mathematician, right? But my youngest son, like when it comes to maths, he's, I don't like to use the expression, but clueless in comparison. So you've got two ends of the spectrum. But on the emotional intelligence side, the younger one is absolutely gifted. He is the most sincere and heart-driven person you'll ever meet. If he saw a fight, he'd be the first one to split it up. He would be the one that's the mediator. The other one couldn't care less, right? In that respect. So he is gifted, but where's that measured? It's not measured at all. You don't have that as a subject at school. You don't have emotional intelligence as at school. No. So anyway, that's kind of lead on to.
But also you don't have these teachers. I do apologize that I'm cutting you here. And because I live in different country, well, I'm back to Bulgaria. And in Bulgaria, things are much more brutal, even at school. And I constantly hear perhaps we will agree because he has children. And I a long time ago. And
my wife is also a teacher.
All right. Yeah. And I can hear such a story, what the teachers are doing for the children. This is just, I have no words to describe and to name it. So
it's a lot of factors, what you're mentioning here. It's also, for example, the teachers' roles was put aside from in the past. In Bulgaria, we had it's the teacher, the mayor, and the pope.
the most
who are the important people in the village.
Yeah, true.
Nowadays, all these roles, they're diluted. Especially for teachers. In Bulgaria, the situation that I have is that the respect to teachers was downgraded, the pay for them. So it's really difficult profession to do.
But how they behave also, Boyan? How they
behave? Yes, it's also like this, but then there is a very difficult work between parents and teachers, which is very important because they need to sync. It's a mutual work. It's not the work of the teacher to solely not only educate, but also to train how to cope with it's a mutual work, and this should be very well. Of course, there are a lot of exceptions of this. Maybe Galia is mentioning, like teacher not behaving properly, kids not behaving properly as well, too, and supported by parents in the bad behaviors as well, too. But it's also what you say, it might vary from country to country as well, too. It's cultural stuff as well. Plus.
Yeah, we were more rebellious and actually more brutal, actually, the way how we express our emotions. That's how we deal with. But in England, as I live in this country, it is big suppression, actually. You do not show your emotions.
Yeah.
And that's why. So probably, 5-6 years ago, they started to speak about these problems, emotional problems, well-being problems to address in the schools, not that much in the schools, in the university first, because I do remember still was in UK. Actually, Bristol was the university with the most suicidal students, which was what? I cannot believe this. And now if you look at each actually university, it's opening well-being coach position in the hospitals, in other institutions as well.
Yeah, it's slowly starting to be something that people are aware of. And I think my issue is that I think people are talking about mental health and well-being a lot more for children. Mainly, like, primary schools are really doing a really, really good job trying to fill the gap. High schools are struggling a little bit. They're a bit further behind. Universities are even further behind. It's that kind of like goes down the train. But my real issue is that we're talking about it and we understand that it's a thing and that we're aware of it for our children, but people still don't know how to respond to the children. They don't know how to talk to the children. They don't know how to care for those children. And now there's a culture where we're saying, okay, well, this child must have a problem. They now need to be referred to a specialist, or that it's a mental health issue that needs a diagnosis. And actually, there's so much more we can do just in how we speak to our children to help them feel safe and connected and loved and understood and heard, that would help prevent a lot of the later issues if we just got that right.
Yeah, it's not illness, it's condition.
Yeah. Exactly.
And depression, it's not illness, it's condition. But when the doctors, you know what they're doing. They prescribe you to the drugs till the end of your life. Well, it is. James, may I hear, as I took the microphone and I'm leave it in your hands now, can you please think of that and to make like 1 hour session and to stream in LinkedIn and to address and to speak about this subject? And just invite people like Shahana, myself, and others actually who are working in this field, and to speak about it, because they're great needs there, people to understand. We're all wounded, all related to our childhood. We know this, we understand this, but how we can help.
That's the key.
You work with that little age, which are the more fragile. I'm working with the big, big girls who are old enough, but this connection with the child, it's already done and the damages are already there. We're moving forward. We're trying to escape, like your father, God bless him, trying to escape in the wrong way. And this does not help anyone.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Yeah. So, Galia, just to address that. So that was the whole idea, not just for doing this show, but also to connect people. Once you've had enough guests, I mean, now that Shahana is the 113th guest, there's been lots of previous guests that talk about child abuse, child behavior, teaching, schooling, mental health, and so on. So the whole idea is about not just connecting the people together, but also to open it up to a panel discussion. Yeah. Because it becomes a good debate when you have like-minded people talking about a subject that they can all interact with and give an opinion, because nobody has all the answers and nobody's the expert at everything. But if you bring a collection of people together to share, you can forge your way forward, that you can actually achieve something, and you can try out different things. I mean, just digressing again, I mean, I started with my own kids. I wanted them to think outside the box. which actually started when they first went to the kindergarten and the pre-kindergarten, like the nursery school. They're actually put in the box because you have to follow all of these rules. And I thought, well, they're in the box. I don't want them to be in the box. I want them to be outside of the box in the first place. And you're trying to put them in and I'm taking them out. So I got them to think for themselves. But the beauty of what we did is bedtime storytelling. And then we addressed all the emotional problems, the challenges, their stories, their imagination, their creativity through stories, their stories. And then we created our first book. I'm just a little plug. I mean, this is the first book.
That's lovely.
And then it's all about, I mean, Tom going to the moon. But yeah, I'll send you the link for that. But this actually helped because through storytelling, I mean, again, we need to go backtrack a little bit. But I mean, I just want to add this. I mean, there's for my own children, I have a concern because of how I grew up and how I wanted my children to have that experience, but the schooling had never changed. The schooling was the same as like when my grandma was at school. And all right, maybe they learned computer studies and stuff, but I mean, in general, it was the same principles. But also, to be fair to the teachers, they are only doing what they're told to do.
Yeah, they've not got the training, the understanding.
And if you look at a teacher, I mean, they have a curriculum and everything that they have to follow. That they also have to follow the guidelines. They also are not mental health or emotionally educated people.
Everybody has their own problems.
So they say they're studying, say they're given maths or something as their subject, right? And then there's problems with kids misbehaving and behavioral problems or emotional problems or bullying or problems they're having at home. They're not trained to deal with that.
No, they're not.
And the classes are so big. I mean, our kids have 24 kids in the class for one teacher.
We've got 30 in ours. Yeah.
It's too much. So we can't blame the teachers per se. We blame the environment and we blame the education. And to me, it's the educational ministers. That's where the buck stops. And because they could change it, but they choose not to. And then you have to question, why don't they? Right? Yeah. It's not as if it's a new problem. It's been going on for centuries. But anyway, let's just kind of park that for a debate. Let's come back to you, Shahana. Tell us a bit more about your business, what you're doing, and how did you actually come into it? I mean, what was your education and what led you to decide that this is what you wanted to do?
Yeah. So after everything that happened with my own life and my own family, I knew, like I say, I wanted to work with children, and that kind of evolved. So from a really young age, as soon as I was allowed to, I was out volunteering in schools, I was doing after school clubs, I was doing summer camps, I was doing nannying. And as I spent more and more time with children, I realised that there are a lot of children at the time who were being told that they were naughty and they were dealing with all these different things in their lives. And I didn't know what those things were as a volunteer or as a TA or whatever. But I could see on some emotional level that how they were is how I felt. And so I had such empathy for these children. And again, I never directly made the link at that stage of my life that, well, because of my experiences, I understand. I never did, because I just accepted what I'd gone through as my life. But on a spiritual level, I suppose, I did connect with those children. And over time, really gravitated towards those kids. I would always be with the naughty ones, calming them down, helping them through their feelings and so on. And very quickly realised that's where I wanted to focus my energy and my time. So I did psychology at university, loved all the lessons that were about people. I wasn't bothered about the statistics and the research and the studies as much as I value that now. That was maths to me, and it wasn't the people, and I wanted to be involved with the people. But anything to do with, understanding the brain, how people worked, the mechanisms and the thinking behind things really hooked me. So I did psychology, and even before I'd finished university, I knew that I wanted to go into some sort of therapeutic work at the time with children. So I then did a postgrad in play therapy, which at the time wasn't really a very known therapy. You know, I remember starting my business and having to educate people. Well, play therapy is just as sort of creditable as, you know, a counselling role, but it's just a different way of working. So I then started to work with children in a therapeutic role as a play therapist in Salford, which is a deprived-ish area of Manchester. And lots of schools sort of heard about my work and wanted to take me on. At the time, I worked for one primary school, and she said, well, work for us and we'll sell you out to other schools in the week, but work for us. And so I did, but I said to her, look, you know, I'm going to do it, I'll do a year, but then I want to start my own business. But in that year, I used to run, you know, wellbeing groups for the children. I used to run like understanding their anger groups and obviously therapy as well. And that sort of work wasn't happening in education at the time. When I look back, I was probably quite forward thinking, but actually, you know, when I was doing it, I just wanted to help the children. But she could see that there was a light in there that was unique. And she sort of wanted to bottle that up. And I remember going to her after a year and saying, okay, I've done this now. I've worked for local primary schools under your umbrella, but I'm going to now go and do this on my own. And she really struggled with that. She was so angry at me and was so disappointed that I was leaving. But I now recognise that she saw those skills as being valuable. And I then went on and started to run my own business. At the same time, in the same year as having my first baby. So the two coincided suddenly, raising a family and starting my own business. And from there, really, I grew what was initially a play therapy practice. So I had play therapists would join my organisation, and I would, you know, allocate them into different schools, and then that expanded. We've now got a team of over 30 therapists across the UK doing, you know, therapy and counselling, charities in education. We work with the homicide team across England and Wales. So we support children who've been bereaved by homicide. And so that part of the business is doing really well. But as time went on, I was acutely aware that yes, we could go in and help the children directly with therapy, and that was making a big difference. But actually, the staff around the children at the time could do so much more than they were doing. And a lot of them felt disempowered and overwhelmed when the children were struggling with their behaviour. And I was very aware that our behaviour is just our way of showing that we're struggling and that we're not okay. And yet they were labelling these children as choosing to misbehave. So I saw a real issue there with the way that we're responding to our children, and started to write training on it and started to say, look, we need to fix this and create therapeutic ways of working in our, you know, learning environments and as part of our teacher roles. Because as you say, James, there's nothing like that out there. They don't get trained like that from the start. And then they're thrown in with 30 children, you know, 7 of which have got emotional and mental health needs, and they don't know how to help those children. And yet they're trying to teach, but they're actually missing where the real teaching should occur. And that's within the emotional and mental health side. Because if you get that right, children can then learn, you know, and that's the big thing that I saw at the time. So here I am with a young baby, I've got this business going, and I was like, right, now I'm going to write these courses. And I remember staying up every night, and I sold my first course to one of my schools, but I hadn't written the course. So I'd sold this 6-module course. I hadn't written it. I knew exactly what I wanted to teach. So I would go and deliver module 1, and then I'd come back and stay up writing the modules for weeks and weeks and weeks every night while juggling the kids and stuff. And then I'd go and deliver module 2, and then I'd come back and write module 3. And by the end of that process, I had like bloodshot eyes. I was so tired. I hadn't slept, but I had what I felt was a masterpiece that I'd really poured all of my experiences into, my own childhood trauma, my understanding of psychology, my understanding of so at the time I was working with children in foster care, so I could bring that in and give that perspective. And I'd worked in education as a TA. So I had this course that had so many aspects to it that other people weren't bringing. You know, you can bring in a person to talk to you about the psychology of the brain, but they can only tell you about the psychology of the brain, you know, or you could bring someone in to talk to you about their trauma, but they can only talk to you about their trauma. I had all of these different facets to what I was doing. So we launched the course, it went amazing, and then it sort of evolved from there. So now I do lots of courses. I also have an award that schools can come on. I've still got my play therapy team. Bye.
Bye.
And it's just constantly growing. So it's been a real journey, but my mission now is trying to help people understand that we need to change education, that actually the way that we approach education isn't helping our children. Our children are coming in, especially since COVID, with so many barriers to learning. They've all experienced a trauma of some sort, because every child in the world experienced COVID in some way, shape or form. And yet we're still teaching in the same way we did and expecting our children to listen. And if they don't listen, we send them out, or we put them on timeout, or we, give them a cross on the board. And what we're doing is we're shaming our children, and we're not teaching them how to manage their own emotions. So my work now is very much about how do we as teaching staff begin to help to raise children's emotional intelligence, highlight those feelings for them, connect with them instead of reject them when they're struggling, and guide them through their emotions, which ultimately is going to help them learn in school and flourish and be able to see themselves as valuable human beings in the world. So literally all of that will then go into my first book, which I'm writing at the moment, and is what I talk about when I do conferences and speaking engagements and keynotes and all of that sort of stuff. So that's kind of full circle.
Congratulations.
It's
I mean, to
amazing. Amazing.
Yeah, to actually achieve this, I mean, whilst you're having a kid as well, and writing it, I mean, I was always taught, because I kind of went to entrepreneurial school, and I was always told that sell your program before you write it.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you have in your mind what you want, but you haven't got necessarily the flow. But if you sell it, then it prompts you to have to write it. And also, once you start, then there's kind of a natural flow because of the feedback and everything else.
Yeah.
So sell it first. Otherwise, you could spend all this time preparing it and writing it, and then find that nobody wants it.
Yeah. Well,
So anyway,
I remember when I first started the course, and people were saying you should write a book. And I remember saying, I'm not ready. There's more learning I need to do. There's more evolving I need to do, and experience I need to have to be able to get to the point of writing the book. The book's going to come. And I knew from day one that I wanted to write. But I also knew that the times where I could have potentially written, it wasn't the time. Now, I can look back and go, I mean, it's evolved massively. I'm also transforming classroom environments now and completely changing the way that schools look and taking out plastic tables and chairs. If I'd have written the book 3 years ago, I wouldn't have got to that point. So I feel like you're so right. Get it out there, do it, experience it, live it, breathe it, speak to people, see it working, and then it's time to write the book. And I'm sure there'll be 10 editions of the book at some point, but we've got to start somewhere.
No, exactly. And you find when you have one idea, if you're that persona type of person, then you'll think of other ideas. And once you start with something, it doesn't mean it has to be perfect. It doesn't mean that that's going to be what you're going to end up with. And as you say, I mean, I started this basically 3+ years ago, to have a chat with someone. And then I thought, well, why don't I record it? Why don't I share it with others? And then it kind of grew from there. And then from there, I thought, these are fantastic stories like yours. Why don't we put them in a book and have other people read the stories?
Yeah.
Because the reason why is also, when I mentioned earlier, people have lost hope. And they feel completely lost and disillusioned. And then when you're feeling like that, it's a downward spiral. But then when you can have, if I'm going to read a book, and I want a book that's going to pick me up, it's going to empower me, I'm going to be engaged with it, I'm going to learn something, and it's going to give me hope, then I want to read a book of regular, everyday people that have done something, like you, like Galia, like Boyan, like all of us, because these stories is a roller coaster ride, and it doesn't mean that we're at the end of our journey. The journey is still going. The destination never ends, because when you get there, there's somewhere else to go. So, but if people can read these stories, and it's 14 regular people, then it's better than reading about some serial entrepreneur, superstar that nobody, excuse my French, gives a shit about, right? It's about regular people. I am not like that. Only 1%, if that, will ever be like that.
Yeah.
But to be like us, everybody can.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. So
And
anyway,
this is
so
the value. But what is differences in between Shahana's, for example, story and the business just roll into the business, because she's the program. She is she carries. She didn't go to discover or to try to find something from outside. It is in her. And you are the product yourself, and you struggle the product, you live this product, and you just went and you delivered, but you had this courage to do it. So this is the reason I see why you're so successful, and because you never gave up. But when God creates us, as James said, he gives us so much, he deposited so much in our identity. As soon as we recognize this, sooner we started, here is what is happening, and you're living proof for that. So amazing.
Oh, you're going to make me emotional. Thank you. That's really lovely way of saying it.
You made me emotional, and your story touches hearts. So you should go. You must go out more. And what you're doing is just one person, one single individual does the changes in the whole system, in the matrix, in the UK. This is, I'm telling you, it's more than amazing. So I congratulate you. I salute you. Keep going, girl. And I want to contact because we